Anime has given us some of the most beautiful moments in entertainment history, but today we're diving into the complete opposite. The scenes that left viewers traumatized and questioning everything they thought they knew about their favorite series. Some of these moments come from shows you'd never expect to get this dark, and others push the boundaries of what animation could show. So grab something to hold on to because we're counting down the 5 most brutal scenes that changed anime forever. And by the end, you'll understand why these aren't just shock value, but masterpieces of storytelling that redefined what the medium could achieve. Coming in at number 5, we have Shield's death from Akame ga Kill. And this scene perfectly establishes why this series became known for its absolutely ruthless approach to character deaths. Because Shield was everything you'd want. In a likable character, she was kind, gentle, caring, and had this beautiful backstory about finding purpose with Night Raid. After feeling useless her whole life, and the cruel irony is that her gentle nature made her death even more devastating. Because here was someone who genuinely cared about protecting people getting brutally torn apart in front of our eyes. And the scene starts during what seems like a routine mission to eliminate some corrupt officials, but everything goes wrong when they encounter Seryu and her biological weapon Hecatonkers. And what makes this death so brutal isn't just the physical violence though. That's certainly horrific enough with Shield literally being cut in half, but it's the psychological aspect of watching someone so pure and kind being destroyed by the very system she was trying to fight against. And the animation team didn't hold back here. They showed every gruesome detail of her final moments, from the shock on her face to the way her body was torn apart. And the sound design during this scene is absolutely haunting, with the wet tearing sounds and Shield's final gasps creating an audio experience that stays with you long after the episode ends. And what really makes this scene work from a storytelling perspective is how it completely subverts viewer expectations. Because up until this point, many anime fans were used to plot armor protecting their favorite characters. But Akame ga Kill said, no, we're gonna show you the real consequences of being an assassin in a corrupt world. And this wasn't just shock value. This was a statement about the reality of their world, where good people die horrible deaths simply because they chose to fight against injustice. And the aftermath of Shield's death reverberates throughout the entire series, affecting not just the characters who witnessed it, but the viewers who thought they were watching a typical action anime and suddenly realized they were in for something much darker and more realistic than they expected. At number 4, we have Marco's death revelation from Attack on Titan. And while Marco technically died much earlier in the series, the flashback showing how he actually died is one of the most psychologically brutal scenes in anime history. Because it's not just about the physical act of killing. It's about the complete betrayal of trust and the horror of realizing that the people you considered your closest friends were monsters all along. And Marco represented everything pure about the Survey Corps. He was the moral compass of the 104th Cadet Corps, always talking about serving humanity and believing in the goodness of his fellow soldiers. And that's what makes his death so devastating, because he died not in glorious battle against Titans, but through the calculated betrayal of Annie Reiner and Bertholdt, the people he trusted most. And the scene itself is a masterclass in psychological horror, because we watch Marco slowly realize what's happening as his supposed friends steal his ODM gear, leaving him defenseless against the Titans. And the most brutal part isn't even the physical death. It's the moment when Marco looks at them, such confusion and hurt, asking why they're doing this to him. And you can see in his eyes that he's not just facing death, he's facing the complete destruction of everything he believed about friendship and trust. And what makes this scene even more disturbing is how casual Annie Reiner and Bertholdt are about the whole thing. They're not angry or emotional. They're just doing what they think they have to do, which somehow makes it worse than if they had killed him in a fit of rage. And the way the scene is animated with close-ups on Marco's face as he realizes he's been betrayed captures the exact moment when his faith in humanity dies before his body does. And this scene works so well because it retroactively changes everything we thought we knew about these characters and forces us to rewatch earlier scenes through the lens of knowing that these trusted friends were capable of such cold-blooded murder. And sometimes the most brutal scenes aren't about blood and gore. They're about broken trust and the horror of realizing that the people you love are capable of destroying you without hesitation. And Marco's death perfectly captures that specific type of psychological brutality that cuts deeper than any physical wound. Coming in at number 3, we have Mitty's transformation from Maiden Abyss. And this scene is particularly disturbing because it takes place in what initially appears to be a cute adventure anime with an art style that looks like it belongs in a children's show, but then delivers body horror that would make experienced horror fans uncomfortable, and the setup is deceptively innocent, with Nanachi and Mitty as 2 children exploring the abyss together, full of hope and determination to reach the bottom. But the abyss has its own plans, and the curse of the 6th layer doesn't care about their friendship or their dreams, and what happens to Mitty during their ascent is genuinely one of the most disturbing transformations ever put to animation. Because we watch this innocent child slowly lose her humanity as the curse warps her body into something unrecognizable, and the horror isn't just in the physical transformation though. That's certainly nightmare fuel. It's in the fact that Mitty remains conscious throughout the entire process, aware of what's happening to her, but unable to stop it or communicate her terror. And the animation team made some truly disturbing choices in how they depicted this transformation, with body parts shifting and growing in ways that violate every expectation of how a human body should work. And the sound design during this sequence is particularly effective, with wet squelching sounds and Mitty's distorted attempts at speech, creating an audio experience that perfectly matches the visual horror. And what makes this scene even more brutal is Nanachi's helpless reaction, watching their best friend become something that can barely be called alive, while being powerless to help or even end her suffering. And this leads to one of the most heartbreaking mercy killings in anime, when Nanachi finally finds a way to free Mitty from her cursed existence. And the scene proved that Maiden Abyss was willing to use its innocent art style as a weapon, making viewers let their guard down before hitting them with content that would be disturbing in any context, but feels especially shocking coming from something that looks so wholesome. And this juxtaposition between cute visuals and horrific content became one of the series' defining characteristics. And this scene established that the abyss itself is the true antagonist, a force of nature that doesn't care about human morality or the bonds between friends, and the lasting impact of Mitty's transformation echoes throughout the entire series, serving as a constant reminder of what the abyss is capable of doing to those who dare to explore its depths. At number 2, we have the eclipse from Berserk, and this sequence represents the gold standard for brutal anime content because it doesn't just destroy characters, it completely annihilates every trace of hope and innocence that the series had built up over dozens of episodes. And what makes the eclipse so devastating is how much time we spent with the Band of the Hawk, learning to love these characters and believing in their dreams of building a better world, only to watch Griffith sacrifice every single one of them to achieve his own twisted vision of power. And the build-up to this moment is crucial because the Golden Age arc spent so much time showing us the bonds between these characters, their shared struggles, their victories, and their genuine care for each other, which makes Griffith's betrayal hit like a physical blow. And when the eclipse begins and the God Hand appears, we realize that everything we thought we knew about Griffith was wrong, and that his friendship with Guts and the others was always secondary to his ambition. And the systematic slaughter of the Band of the Hawk is brutal enough on its own, with beloved characters being torn apart by demons, ways that push the boundaries of what animation can show. But the real brutality comes from the personal nature of Griffith's betrayal, because he doesn't just kill his friends, he destroys them in the most psychologically damaging way possible. And the assault on Casca, while Guts is forced to watch, represents the absolute nadir of human cruelty, because it's not just physical violence, it's a deliberate attempt to destroy everything pure and loving in their relationship. And the scene forces Guts to confront his own powerlessness. Despite all his strength and skill, he can't protect the person he loves most from the person he trusted most, and the animation during the eclipse pushes every boundary with imagery that sears itself into your memory and refuses to let go. And what makes this scene so effective from a storytelling perspective is how it serves as the perfect origin story for Guts' rage and quest for revenge. Because after experiencing this level of betrayal and loss, how could he be anything other than consumed by fury? And the eclipse doesn't just end the Golden Age arc, it completely recontextualizes everything that came before it, turning what seemed like a story about friendship and ambition into a tragedy about the corruption of innocence and the price of unchecked desire. And this scene has influenced countless other anime and manga creators, showing them how brutality serve a narrative purpose beyond simple shock value. And even decades later, the eclipse remains the benchmark for how to destroy your characters and your audience in the most psychologically devastating way possible. And at number 1, we have Power's death from Chainsaw Man. And this scene represents the evolution of brutal storytelling in modern anime because it understands that contemporary audiences have become somewhat desensitized to physical violence. So instead, it weaponizes emotional attachment and uses our love for characters against us in the most devastating way possible. And Power had undergone incredible character development throughout the series, transforming from a selfish devil who only cared about herself into someone who genuinely loved Denji and saw him as family. And this character growth made her death infinitely more painful because we had watched her learn to care about someone other than herself, only to have that growth become the weapon used to destroy both her and Denji. And what makes this scene so brutal isn't the method of her death. Though Makima's casual efficiency is certainly disturbing, it's the complete lack of ceremony or meaning behind it, because Makima doesn't kill Power out of anger or revenge. She kills her simply because she can, and because it serves her purpose of breaking Denji completely, and the scene is made even more horrific by how normal everything seems right up until the moment of death, with Power and Denji sharing what appears to be a peaceful moment before Makima appears and ends everything with no warning or build-up, and the psychological impact on Denji is immediate and total, because Power wasn't just his friend. She was the last connection he had to anything resembling a normal life. And with her death, Makima successfully isolates him completely, leaving him with nothing but his pain and rage. And what makes this death particularly effective is how it builds on everything we know about Denji's character and his desperate need for human connection. Because losing Power doesn't just hurt him, it fundamentally breaks something inside him that may never heal. And the animation and direction during this scene are deliberately understated, which somehow makes the impact even more powerful, because there's no dramatic music, elaborate death sequence, just the sudden absence of someone who meant everything to the protagonist. And this approach reflects modern anime's understanding that sometimes the most brutal thing you can do to a character isn't torture them physically, but destroy their emotional world and leave them with nothing but the memory of what they've lost. And Power's death serves as the perfect catalyst for Denji's final transformation, because it strips away his last connection to humanity and forces him to confront what he's willing to become in order to survive. And this scene proves that modern anime has learned to use our emotional investment in characters as a weapon, creating moments that are more psychologically devastating than any amount of physical violence could ever be. So what do all these scenes have in common, and why do they work so effectively, where other brutal moments might feel gratuitous or exploitative? And I think the answer lies in how each of these scenes serves a specific narrative purpose beyond just shocking the audience, because Shiel's death establishes the reality of the world and shows that good intentions aren't enough to survive in a corrupt system. And Marco's death reveals the true nature of trusted characters and forces us to question everything we thought we knew about them. And Midi's transformation demonstrates the uncaring cruelty of natural forces and shows how the world itself can be the greatest enemy, and the eclipse serves as the perfect destruction of innocence and hope, while simultaneously creating the perfect motivation for revenge. And Power's death represents the ultimate weaponization of emotional attachment, showing how love itself can become a source of devastating pain. And each of these scenes also showcases incredible technical artistry from the animation teams, who had to find ways to convey unspeakable horror while maintaining artistic integrity, and the fact that these moments remain impactful years later proves that they succeeded in creating something more than just shock value. They created genuine art that explores the darkest aspects of human nature and the consequences of living in worlds where violence and betrayal are everyday realities. And these scenes have collectively pushed anime as a medium forward by proving that animation can tackle the most serious and difficult themes with the same depth and sophistication as any other art form. And they've also changed how audiences approach anime by showing that even the most innocent looking series can hide profound darkness, and that our favorite characters are never truly safe from the consequences of their choices. And while these scenes are undeniably difficult to watch, they serve an important purpose in the broader landscape of anime storytelling by reminding us that real stakes require real consequences, and that the most powerful stories are often those that aren't afraid to hurt us in service of a greater truth. If you made it through this entire video, then you've just experienced some of the most intense and psychologically challenging content that anime has to offer. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge that discussing these scenes can be emotionally difficult. So if you found any of this content disturbing, please remember that it's perfectly normal to have strong reactions to traumatic material, and there are mental health resources available if you need support. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the darker side of anime storytelling, you might want to check out my analysis of how these series use psychological trauma as a narrative device, or my breakdown of the animation techniques that make these scenes so effective. Both videos explore similar themes about how anime can tackle serious subject matter with artistic integrity. And if this video helped you understand why these brutal scenes are considered masterpieces of storytelling, rather than just shock value, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more mature analysis of anime's most challenging content. And remember that while these scenes are difficult to watch, they represent some of the finest examples of how animation can explore the full range of human experience, including its darkest corners. Have a good one, and take care of yourselves.